Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story, where each weekday we tackle a single relevant question based on our Bible reading for that day. This week our reading is centered around the book of Philippians. Today I'm joined by Sheryl Daughety and Chris Rexroad, and our question comes from the verses 4 through 7 of Philippians chapter 4. And he says, "Always be full of joy in the Lord. I'll say it again, rejoice. Let everyone see that you are considerate in all you do. Remember the Lord is coming soon. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus." He says, don't worry about anything. How do we not worry about anything? And define worry. Maybe that would be a good place to start. For you, what does worry mean?
I feel like worry for me is probably thinking about something more than I should. And I don't mean processing it. I just mean, thinking about the outcome, the possibilities, all the different ways that something could go.
Mhm.
I would say by nature, I'm probably not really a worrier. But when I find myself thinking about something like that repeatedly, that feels to me like worry.
I gotta say, like 90 to 95% of all the things that we worry about never actually come to existence. So I mean, with statistics like that, it really is kind of a waste of our time, and I think it probably goes into our need to control or to know something in advance so we can be at peace. And by doing that, we're not giving God the trust that we ought to, and sometimes we're thinking that things should be a certain way and God's got another plan.
So do you worry? Do you think you worry?
I know that I do. I try to do less, and I don't take what he's saying there as like an absolute, because there's certain things we're just going to naturally worry about, like our kids, whether they're little or they're adults. That they're safe and that they're making good decisions, and they're for their future um, careers and stuff like that. But to dwell on it to an unhealthy point, I think, is something that we really need to avoid doing.
What is unhealthy?
To where it builds up into anxiety, where it builds into fear, um, where it starts to like harm your health or even your relationship with God.
Yeah, and I see people worry so much about something sometimes that it almost makes them, it brings them to the point that they're almost unable to do anything about whatever it is that they could have done. It, I don't know if it turns into like such a huge fear that they don't even want to tackle whatever it is anymore. Um, but that's painful to watch from the outside.
When I think about worry, because I'm a processor, and um, there are times that significant things happen that it's the last thing I think about before I go to sleep, and the first thing I think about when I wake up for a period of time. And I'm trying to process it, and it's even more difficult when you have limited control.
Mhm.
Because there are some things you just have very, very limited
Mhm.
control
Yeah.
over. Um, the time when I know that it's become unhealthy. As a matter of fact, Pastor Jay and I were having a conversation just yesterday. When it's become unhealthy, when I become unsettled and I can't sleep or I don't have peace, it's become unhealthy. It's taking too much of my time. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be situations that affect you that way that you have to process. When um, you go through divorce, or um, something tragic has happened, maybe a betrayal in a marriage, or your kid gets in a car accident, and they have some physical limitations. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going to consume how you think, and how you work, whether you it falls into the worry category. But those are things that have happened, and what I see is what keeps you awake is what am I going to do to deal with it.
Mhm.
The unhealthy things are the things that haven't happened, may never happen, that just consume us all the time. And I know people who are always the worst case scenario. Like, when you bring something up, they're going to throw ice cold water on it, not just cold water,
Mhm.
and not just water, just ice cold water, because they're always thinking about what's the worst thing that can happen, and they're worried that that worst case scenario is going to come about. And um, we've probably seen this play out over the last 3 years significantly. As we're recording this, it's in the news that there's more COVID cases. We're 3 years removed from a pandemic. There are some people, all you have to do is say that word, and they freak out. It's like the world is coming to an end, and they worry. Is this going to happen to me? Am I going to die? And maybe I'm a little bit too arrogant. I just don't think that way. Does that make sense to y'all?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's true with everything, that there's a certain amount of prevention you can use. And then, like, once you're doing that, that's about all you can do about most situations. And I don't know, I feel like you can either be frozen with fear about those things, or you can continue to move on with your life. It doesn't mean you don't think it's valid. It just means you don't want to let it consume you.
With any of this, I mean, you first have to discipline yourself to stop worrying less and to start being proactive on things and moving forward. And then the evidence of God sustaining you in those times, whether it was something that you expected to come or if it was a different outcome. And usually, if it's a different outcome, it's a better outcome. And then that creates that confidence in you that I don't have to worry about all these things, whether it's COVID or, are my kids doing okay? My son and daughter-in-law are in Hawaii. I mean, they're working there and that far away. So if something were to happen to them, as a parent, those things go through your minds. But after you have that evidence from God where he's sustaining you, not just giving you what you want, but taking care of your needs in the best way, you have a lot more confidence in that. You begin to lift more things up in prayer. It's a lot healthier way of living.
What are you most likely to worry about?
Probably my kids' future. Not that I think anything bad is going to happen, but just prayerful that they have a full and healthy future.
Sure. What are you most likely to worry about?
Maybe with my kids, but I don't really know that I would consider that worry so much as, for both of my kids from the time that they were born, I've been praying for their spouses because I have zero control over that. But it's going to play such a huge role in their adult lives and all the things that come after. But I mean, you have to trust God with that. You can interject your opinion when it's asked for, and that's about it.
If it's asked for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do that too.
Yeah.
Pray for their future spouses.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I pray for that person's spiritual formation as much as I do my own kids, because it's going to be really important.
The things that weigh on me more than anything else usually are situations that I wish I could control and I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's with my kids, but often it's things here at the church, or situations that have happened that, all right, if I could if you would listen to me, this is what I would do. This is what you should do. And the most frustrating ones are when what somebody is doing is having a negative effect on me, and they won't stop what they're doing, and can't see how destructive what they're doing is. And I can think of numerous situations that would be the case, and you want them to listen, but they don't, and it can frustrate you.
Mm-hmm.
But he says, if you pray, you can have God's peace. So for y'all, what is God's peace?
Just knowing that he's going to handle it and it's going to come out good according to him.
When you're in certain situations, it can almost feel supernatural because it does not make sense that you would feel so at peace and okay with however things turn out in a situation that seems like it should be really stressful or that's doomed to have a bad outcome, But I do think it a lot of that does go back, and I think this is one of the biggest challenges to us, to something that you said in the beginning, Chris, which is that it's all about us truly trusting God, truly trusting Him, because in reality, there are so few things in our lives that we really do have control over. I mean, it's a lot of stuff with your own self, and that's just about it.
Even that is limited. You have control over your attitude.
Right.
I do believe you have your control over your attitude, and that might be it. Because there are so many other things that can affect the outcome of a situation. And, I have had some conversations recently where I was trying to explain to people I couldn't affect that. I could not
change the outcome.
I couldn't change an outcome. I can't do it. You might wanted me to, but I couldn't change the outcome of it. And but for me, the peace of God comes where I can get to a place that I fully trust in Him, that He's going to work it out for the betterment of His will and kingdom. May not always be what I want, because I can assure you He's not writing the same book I'm writing.
Yeah.
I would have written it a little different. But in the end, I have to trust that there's something greater that He's trying to accomplish, and I have to rest in that. And that's tough to do. It takes me sometimes days. And the conversation, I mentioned Pastor Jay and I had a conversation yesterday, and sometimes you think, okay, I'm getting there, and then something else comes along, and you're right back, having to sort through it and process it, and it's a challenge.
My son Silas and I are studying the Old Testament right now, and we were talking about the life of Joseph, and how he would never chosen any of those things for himself, but that he chose to just trust God in all the situations that He put him in, and what an enormous effect it ended up having on two different nations. And but it would have never been anything that he would have wanted to happen. You were talking about, writing the book differently and then fully trusting God.
Once you see the end of the story, you go, okay, God.
Yeah.
I see.
But you don't know it when you're in it.
When you're in the pit or in the prison, none of those things are going, yeah, this is great, God. I know in the end it's going to be good. You might say it out loud, but you ain't feeling it right in that moment. Well, thank you for joining us today on this edition of One Single Story. We hope you'll be back with us next week as we start a conversation around the book of Colossians.